Okay, our next speaker is Jhones Sarturi, and he's actually at Texas Tech, but you did your PhD here at Nebraska, didn't you? So he's representing Nebraska and Texas Tech. I will take a little credit for him too, right? But today he's going to talk a little bit more about forage quality and really thinking about the economics of forage quality in growing and finishing diets. So I look forward to hearing your presentation.
Great. Thank you, Mary. Appreciate. Can you hear me well over there? Over here is great. In front at least. Good afternoon. You're brave. You're holding on. I hope you don't disappoint at the very end, right? So I'm going to stake over here. I don't know about you guys, but I've been having so much fun with the analogies today. So that's communication, right? So that's how we use analogies as an effective way to communicate. So there's Dr. Kang over there. So I hope I won't give a Texas shower to anyone here today. But if I do, I'll make sure that temperature of the water is not too hot, right? Because we saw that that's a bad thing, right? All right, so let's get to this. So a couple of the challenges over here, I'm talking on forage quality, and I'll tell you what my definition of that forage quality is, and I will get a little bit out of the world of only of the silage, so it'll be more a broad perspective. So I hope you follow me on that. So based on grower and finisher diets. So I have three mainly objectives only here for us in this presentation. So starting here with some principles and some definitions, because I want it to be very clear for you what I am understanding here as a forage quality and how can we improve that. And give you some ideas, and this is not the mainly topic of the presentation, but some ideas on how could we improve this forage quality based on my definition, because I'm speaking, so I guess I have the luxury to follow my definition and see what you think about that. But to improve that forage quality, so just some ideas on things that our research team has published. Okay, so I'll talk about some of our work over there, because then I don't need too many slides. I can put something in there. I can tell you a nice story. So things that our lab has published. And this will be the core of it, is basically just working some scenarios on how this improved in forage quality can affect perhaps the net energy of our diets when we mix this forage into the diets, how it would affect a diet overall, the net energy or the energy of these diets, as well as how animal perhaps can perform, assuming that by definition, all models are wrong. Perhaps a couple of them are useful. Keeping that in mind, I guess graduate students hear that a lot, but I guess everyone follow that. So using that, some of that modeling, how can that affect the animal performance? And then putting at the end the perspective on how an improvement in that forage quality in 10, 20, perhaps 30% can affect the savings that you might have on the per ton of dry matter of your diet, which is quite expensive nowadays, right? So how can we do some savings by improving the quality of the dry matter of these diets in a grower diet situation or in a finisher as well? Okay, so that's the goal. So I always like to talk a little bit about this, because we can plug several concepts that we learned throughout the day today. So the previous speakers just set the ground very well for me over here, so saving me a lot of time. So, but this graph over here I just took from the most recent National Academies of Science, Engineering, Medicine, the book 2016. Who developed this or put this together was Dr. Mary Beth Hall, and she did a great job over here on separating those plant cell walls and plant cell content, and which can affect the quality of this, right? So this is Nutrition 101 over here on forage quality. So a couple of things that were added in that model, and we can talk about this later, but it was mentioned for Dr. Kang as well here on some of those organic acids that can affect the energy or the energy value or the energy content of this diet. So those are included in here. Water-soluble carbohydrates, we know that is needed for the fermentation, but let's just get a little bit out of the world of the silage on the forage in general. So this will be readily energy available nutrients for these animals. Starch, of course, if we think about grains, small grains, or whatever, or corn silage, or even sorghum, and all the options that we learned, that we heard about today, the amount of starch, we know that will affect the amount of energy, especially when you have a higher degree of processing of that corn, and then we have more of that starch being available for the animal. So, and I don't even want to touch over here on the soluble fiber portion, which we know that is a readily available source of energy for the animals as well. So these are things that we touched throughout the day today. How can we preserve? How can we have that for the animals? The point that I want to touch over here is about this other big portion of the plant over here. This other big portion of the plant when we talk about forages, which is the fiber and the quality of fiber that we are providing to these animals. Okay? Although I recognize that all these things will provide energy as well, we have a very large component of it, which is what we call the neutral detergent fiber. And when I say fiber today, at any other given moment, I'll be talking about nutrient detergent fiber. Okay, the cellulose, hemicellulose, and a little bit of that phenolic compound over here, the lignin, which is embedded to that. So that would be my fiber fraction over here. So the point is, how can we improve this portion, or how this big portion of this forage called neutral detergent fiber can affect, or can potentially affect, the quality of this forage. So that's what I want to touch a little bit more today at this moment. So a couple of principles over here. So the first one is that raising forage quality over here by raising the NDF, total digestible, the NDF total tract digestibility. So I want to improve printing here. My concept of improving quality here is increasing that fiber digestibility, how much of that fiber that animals can actually utilize inside their digestive tract. So if I can improve that by 10, by 20, or by 30%, I'm assuming that I'm improving the quality of this forage. Okay, so that's my definition over here. The magnitude of the response will depend on a couple of things, and I hope I will plot these and I show a couple of examples, but the amount of fiber offered, right? So we have that, I guess we could call common sense. Nowadays, I don't like to use that word anymore because perhaps I lack common sense when I start to think about some of these things. But as more fiber we offer to these animals, perhaps more opportunities we have of improvement when the quality of that fiber is improved, right? So the amount that include in the diet will affect that for sure. And the potential for improvement, right? Are things that are very challenged, so then I don't want to use the word bad, or very challenged to be improved, and are things that are too good to be improved, right? We have a couple of examples of co-products that have 80, 85% fiber digestibility, and how better can you get on that? So the potential of improvement over here go in both ways, the ones that can be improved a lot, or those that perhaps that don't have much room, okay? And I hope I will address some of those examples throughout, okay? So those are the setting up the rules over here, the grounds for what I prepared for you guys. So there are several ways. I guess we got several examples on how can we improve that forage quality. And one of the things that first come to mind is one of the decisions that we take very early in time is, what is the hybrid, right? What is the selection of the ingredient, or what is the hybrid that I'm using? And we have all that industry to support that, and we have a competition, and competition is good, right? So companies and offering different hybrids, and perhaps that is a very important decision moment, because we saw today that is hybrid dependent most of the times, and we have several varieties over there and several traits that those varieties will offer. But one of the things I would like to show in this study over here is that we were, not too long ago, we were checking over there corn silage comparing to sorghum silage in beef cattle finishing diets. And we had the hypothesis over here that that sorghum silage would have an improved fiber digestibility, and so it would perhaps offset some of that decrease in starch that that forage would provide, but we could balance that with a greater fiber digestibility. And happens quite often, I guess, maybe to me, is that I proved myself that I was wrong in those hypotheses. And perhaps when we look at the fiber digestibility for that crop that's supposed to have a greater fiber digestibility, it was actually 10 percentage units lower. So that was an expectation, right? I'm just bringing this example over here because we have expectations when we decide about a hybrid, when we put up that for that strategy. But there is a very long distance between deciding for a hybrid and feeding the animals, especially if we are preserving that forage, right? I guess all the speakers today, I guess, made a very solid statement about that. There's a lot of things that go in between these two things, deciding for the hybrid and feeding the animals. And it was actually the case over here. And I can tell a couple of stories about this, on how a wilting could affect that, on how that harvest and on the preservation. But I guess we got the picture today that there's a very big distance between these two moments. Okay? So assessment only of the forage upon harvest, dead end, right? Because these animals will be fed long after that, and the quality of what you're feeding is actually what will affect the animal, and not only the quality of what putting to begin with. Okay, so there's a very long distance between those two things. Okay. So a couple of other things you could do other than selecting and having good practices to improve fiber digestion. There are some technologies, some strategies that you could actually use mixed to your diets actually afterwards, right? So fibrolytic enzymes, so positive effects on fibrolytic enzymes perhaps inside the silo could also be replicated inside the animal, right? There are some technologies available out there that you can use some of these fibrolytic enzymes, and in this case over here, improving dry matter, organic matter. You can be the judge for this p-value over here, but including the amount of digestible dry matter and organic matter that these animals were consuming, which is a combination of improved digestibility and improved intake as well. So there are some technologies out there that you can improve that forage quality, okay? So direct fed microbials, in this case over here, these are also Texas Panhandle, so sting flake corn-based diets, perhaps not the best environment for a fiber digestion inside the rumen, if you think with me on that perspective, but showing over here that there is evidence for improving NDF digestibility, the tougher portion of the fiber degradation as well, ADF digestibility, and even hemicellulose over here being improved as well. This is mixed afterwards, right? We're not talking about silage right now. We're talking about something that we are feeding to the animal, technology that you can do afterwards. So that's another one that we're trying to figure out over here. When is the best strategy or the best moment that we can improve that forage digestion, that NDF digestibility? And we did a metabolism study over here, going back to the basics of a 50-50 forage concentrate type of ruminal environment and a 92-8 roughage only, and then having that as an inoculant and testing multiple substrates and showing that technologies perhaps might be affecting over here regardless of that ruminal environment. Kind of corroborating a little bit of that data that we were feeding animals in a sting flake corn-based finishing diet with a small amount of roughage inclusion and still having improved fiber digestibility, some opportunities for that. Okay, so just follow that. And then trying to strategize over here, when is the best moment? 60 days prior finishing, so it would be the worst environment, ever over there for fiber digestion just before we ship these animals to the harvesting facility, to the packing plant. Higher degree oxidative stress over there going on, a lot of the deposit tissue being deposited, and animals consuming a lot of dry matter. Could we improve fiber digestibility in that environment, 60-day prior slaughter? Yes, dry matter, NDF, ADF digestibility as well. NDF digestibility being improved with some of these strategies. Right. This one was intensive management. So we did the same thing, but now on intensive management. So I had a collaboration. So we're measuring methane and other gases emissions. So then using SFC technique. For those that never seen that before, you look at the animal, it has a lot of yolks in their head, and we're bringing those animals to the chute multiple times during the week. So intensive management. In that intensive management, can we increase NDF digestibility, even dry matter digestibility, using some of these technologies? Actually, the improvement was even greater when we had a greater challenge in place, and we were stimulating that NDF digestion. It's still in the final 60 days on feed. So going even further, so initial 60 days arrival to the feedlot. Naive calves coming from grass. These calves are coming from New Mexico, will stay in a calf-fed system inside the feedlot 230 days. Are those initial, is there a possibility to increase that fiber digestion at that beginning phase, those 60 days at the beginning, right after arrival, and then after on the final 60 days as well? So this is a calf-fed system. So we just, in the same study, doing these two digestibility assessments, and growth performance was assessed as well. Yes, so this was basically the fourth time that we're repeating the same strategy in different situations, and we were getting positive results in all those. So the possibilities are out there, increasing that forage quality regardless of what that forage means for you as far as name of the ingredient. There is the potential there to be improved. And in my definition over here, improving digestion of fiber is improving quality of that forage as well. A couple of other things that when we talk about forage, we just simply cannot forget that forages will not be the only sources of fiber in our diets, especially in modern diets. I like to call it modern diets, where we have alternative products in there, byproducts, right, co-products, in which we'll have most of the times an elevated fiber content, okay? So this was just an opportunity that we had to test over there in the Panhandle some of the different distillers we had in there. So I guess it's the first day to talk about distillers grains here today in Nebraska. I guess, yay. That was bringing back the concept, I guess. But we were just testing this because we don't have very many ethanol plants over there. And depending on the time of the year, we have a combination between sorghum distillers grains and corn distillers grains, or a combination of both. So we were just looking at these combinations. Just corn dry distillers grains, corn with de-oiled dry distillers grains, a mixture. I don't know if you can see two colors here, but sorghum and yellow corn distillers grains, a mixture. Only sorghum distillers and wet distillers from sorghum. So the point I want to make in here is that when we look at this NDF digestibility, this is a parent total tract digestibility for these animals, the fiber fraction. And then we go through these columns in here, we get to one that kind of claims our attention, right? So we have that one, everybody 40s, and then we get to one that is 30, right? So it's a challenge. So we could look at that with sad eyes, right? And say, well, this is perhaps not a very good strategy, but perhaps that's where lies the opportunity, right? Is that the moment that I can do something else and then perhaps raise that forage quality and then have the expected outcomes I might have, or I might expect, let's put it that way. So every time you see a challenge over there, perhaps the opportunity lies on that challenge. And then I see this in this what I would call modern diets, where we have more fiber content coming from co-products, not only from forages. Okay. So what I did here, we have a couple of publications over here that we had a chance to compare grower diets with a high and low quality, and I'll tell you how I define that on high and low quality, and also finisher diets with high and low quality. So, and I'll go individually one over here, but I was playing with this high and low quality in these experiments with high quality, including corn silage, or including good quality alfalfa hay, not the kind of alfalfa hay that we usually try to feed cattle in the panhandle. This would be good quality alfalfa hay. And some other things that can make it very challenging, although challenging as far as fiber digestion, but very perhaps attractive depending on the price of those co-products. So not sure if you guys are familiar with this one over here, cotton burrs. Would you raise your hand if you know what cotton burrs is? All right. For those that don't know what cotton burrs is, the nickname is gene trash. So you can kind of you can have an idea, right, of what we're dealing with as far as fiber digestibility or quality of that fiber. Okay. So cotton industry very prominent over there. We can use some of these byproducts. So I was playing with these forages and then having grower with a high and low quality and a finisher that with a high and low quality. Okay. So let me share some of the outcomes over here. So I got those diets, and then I'll show you a little bit of the guts of the model over here. So then you know where that number is coming from. So I was just using here the California Net Energy System. So Nutrition 101 here, back a little bit to it. So I have measured numbers from these studies, right? So I'm not just taking fully from the book. So I have these studies where I could measure these animals and measure the ingredients as well. So I was just using the WISE equation over here for the estimation of TDN. This morning we were talking about TDN and net energy, and I guess I heard a comment that was from the audience said, oh, prefer the net energy or the TDN, but at the end of the day, all these are coming from TDN. All the fancy net energy numbers that we use in these models nowadays are coming from the TDN anyways. So if you want to have a good estimations on the energy, you better get TDN right, because everything else is calculated based on that. So I'm starting from the basis over here. So I have this long equation over here, which was published, and then I have several inputs over here from the forage that helps me to estimate the TDN from that forage. Okay, so I went there. Well, before I change anything, so then from that TDN, I can estimate metabolizable energy using my colleague over here, Dr. Gavin's publication, 2016. So right after, so it's included in the amendment or of the National Academies of Science in 2016 in the book, the new green book, right? So I used his equations over here to estimate metabolizable energy. And then, of course, if I'm using this variable metabolizable energy, I have to use their equations for the estimation of net energy for maintenance and net energy for gain. So I'm not reinventing the wheel over here. I'm just using the California Net Energy System to plug the amount of energy that I have in these forages and estimate an improvement in energy content. And the improvement in energy content would be coming from the increase in digestibility of the fiber fraction only of these forage ingredients. Okay, so I didn't create any equation. I was just using the ones that we have published and available. Okay. So how we're going to show this for you guys. So I have four scenarios over here. So the first scenario that I'll share with you will be the low quality grower diet. And the scenarios that I plotted was, what if I take this low quality grower diet, which I have two mainly roughage ingredients over here, my cotton burrs and my corn stalks, representing roughly almost half of my diet, 45% on a dry matter basis on that diet. And if I take only these two ingredients, NDF, and I improve the NDF from these two ingredients only on a 10, 20, and 30% on a improvement of digestibility in 10, 20, and 30%. So what is the effect of that? Okay, because those improvements we have seen published, and we have a couple, and I showed you a couple of examples of those improvements. So what would be the impact on the animal? Is the model predicting something that can be reliable or not? Okay, so that's the first scenario, working in a low quality forage grower diet. When I say low quality, that's what I mean by low quality, those two ingredients being included in that diet. Okay. So let's take a look at my overall diet, and I'm talking about the forage portion, right? The NDF portion. So overall, in this diet, combining all the ingredients, roughly 40% NDF, 39% NDF on a dry matter basis, in which 22% units of those would be the tough fiber, the ADF fiber. But in this diet, overall, 39%. Okay? What I used was the improvement on the forage ingredients only. So what if I take only these two ingredients, and which represent about 30% units of the fiber in this diet, of the NDF in this fiber, and I increase this by 10, 20, and 30% as far as these two ingredients fibers digestibility. What is the effect of that? Okay? That's the first scenario for the low quality forage diet. And then in the proceedings over there, you will see a couple of tables which has this output in there. And I'll try to make it easy over here, but it has three outputs over here. The first of all is what would be the increase in net energy based on that improvement in fiber digestibility of those two ingredients only. What would be the effect on the animal? And what would be the effect on a savings in a diet on the three prices? This is a grower diet, so I'm plotting over here $150 per ton of dry matter. Maybe before the pandemic, that was more realistic. We are closer to this nowadays, $250 per ton of dry matter. And again, this is a grower diet, okay? And maybe around here, if you're really using these low quality ingredients over here, which are more affordable on a dry matter basis, of course. But they have these three comparisons in here. So what a 10, 20, and a 30% improvement in fiber digestibility in these two ingredients over here can induce in that diet. So in net energy, improvements in net energy from 7 to 16%, putting in percent in megacalories, small improvements. If you put in percentage units, those megacalories as a percentage-wise, it kind of becomes more aggressive, those numbers, but these are not megacalories. This is the percentage raised or the percentage improvement in that energy. So what can this induce in animals that are growing? We perhaps see some increase in average daily gain, and that's not unpopular when we feed a better forage quality, animals improving average daily gain. Sometimes we don't see on a finisher diets, and I'll show you that, but in animals that are growing, that is not uncommon. But maybe the greatest effect over here would be in that efficiency, right? So the animals that are consuming less to gain that same amount of average daily gain. So I use the gain efficiency over here. Perhaps I just thinking better now. Perhaps I could use a feed conversion. That would be easier way to look at it. But feed conversion is just the inverse of gain to feed. It will be basically the same message. So improving that efficiency in those animals by 3 or almost 4% up to 11% when we get to that extreme, where we can raise 30% of the fiber digestibility of these two low-quality ingredients. So that's the impact. And the impact is coming from a greater amount of NDF that they provide to the diet and the great opportunity that they have to be improved because these two guys are low-quality fiber digestion. Okay? So how would this represent in savings in dollars per ton? So think about if they are gaining the same amount of average daily gain every day, but they eat less. So they eat less of your diet, right? Eating less of your diet, how much did that represent to you? 10, 20, and 30% improvement in fiber digestion, raising ranging from $9, almost $10 to $27 per ton of dry matter. If you can get that improvement in 10, 20, and 30% on the fiber digestibility, okay? So for the second, the third, and the fourth example, I won't spend too much time on explaining here how the outlook look like, but I'll go straight to the number. But it's basically here, my high quality diet, my high quality grower diet now, in which I don't have cotton burrs and corn stalks anymore. Now I have corn silage and good quality alfalfa hay, okay? And these are all, the information from these are from studies that are published already, okay? So this is not pure only model. I'm using the information that we have published already. So this is the difference between the previous diet, okay? Better forage quality. So how much NDF in the overall diet I have, less than before, right? As better we get in those diets, these ingredients, these forages, they will decrease the amount of fiber that they can offer. But in this case, it's about 28% of this diet will be NDF, okay? And half of that roughly represented by the tough fiber, which is ADF. If I look at only these two guys here, only my forage ingredients in the diet, they represent about 22 percentage units as NDF, okay? And a little bit less than that representing the tough portion, which is ADF. So the question again is, what is an improvement in this fiber here in 10, 20, and 30% can bring? What an improvement in fiber digestibility by 10, 20, and 30% can bring as energy in the diet, as animal performance, and as potentially savings in the diet. Okay, so that's the question again. So the same type of setting over here. So raising energy over here. So now we have, this is better quality, right? It's harder to improve something that is already perhaps good, and that fits in the category of common sense, which is always good to see, right? It's harder to improve something that is already good. But improvements by 10, 20, or 30% in fiber digestion of these two guys, 2% the 6 improvements in net energy in those diets in general. Efficiencies more, and this is again, these are grower diets, right? These animals are not in the finishing out. They're growing over here, and the assumption is 500 to 800 pounds. I guess I should have mentioned that. So this is the growing period that I'm giving here. These animals adding about 300 pounds of body weight. So usually they have a better efficiency than the animals that are in a finisher diet. Improvements are a little more modest here now, between 2 to 7%. 7% if you can get all that fiber improvement. 30% of these two ingredients over here. What will that represent in savings in this high quality grower diet? If we go straight over here to the $250 per ton of dry matter as a base price for this diet, almost $7 to roughly $19 in savings, because these animals would be, assuming here feed conversion or the inverse of gain efficiency, would be gaining the same amount but eating less for that. So it would bring savings of this magnitude over here, $7 to $18 per ton of dry matter, okay, if we can get all that improvement. Okay. So perhaps on the grower diet, we will see, well, those are things that we see these animals respond very well. They respond to a greater quality of the fiber, so those things are very popular. I guess the big question would become when we try to analyze finisher diets, right? Do we have a room for improvement in fiber digestion in a finisher diet? Okay, the same improvements that I showed you, so those examples before. Okay, so this starting with the low quality, and low quality over here. Matt, please don't take me wrong. I guess you mentioned before that we were using those sorghum silage to decrease the energy of those cows, right? So perhaps that's what they're doing in here. So sorghum silage, that's my forage now, is sorghum silage, 20% inclusion. Okay. So NDF of this finisher diet, about 20%. 20% inclusion of NDF on the overall diet, accounting for all the ingredients. If we only take a look at on the sorghum silage, it would represent roughly 10 percentage units of the NDF, of the fiber fraction of this diet. Okay, and more than half of that, about 6 percentage units, being the toughest portion of the fiber, which is the ADF. Okay, so improvements. We saw improvements. I showed you studies that we could improve that. So the digestion of in a finisher diet environment. So what an improvement of 10, 20, and 30% would induce. Okay, the same type of thinking. Now we have a less representation, tougher fiber, improvements from 1.5 to 3.6% in net energy. If we look at on gain the feed or the opposite feed conversion, improvements from 1 to 3%. Now it gets tricky because depending on how you're measuring this, you need to be capable to detect differences at this magnitude. And what would this bring us as far as savings in the diet that you're feeding these animals? No, I hope you realize now that my finisher diet is more expensive over here because this we have more corn inclusion, so more expensive diet. $300 per ton of dry matter down in the Panhandle. In the Texas Panhandle, it costs a little bit more for us. We have to ship corn down there, but this would be very close to what you guys experience over here in this portion of the country. $300 per ton of dry matter. This is a finisher diet, improving 10, 20, or 30% of this fiber digestibility, saving $3 to $9 per ton of dry matter. Again, the idea is not making these animals gain more. They got to the point that they're gaining perhaps probably maximum that they could, but they're becoming more efficient. They're eating a little bit less. High quality, exactly the same scenario. The only difference over here is now is corn silage, right? Now it's corn silage. Less in represent my overall diet over here having about 17% NDF, 17% NDF on a dry matter basis. If I look at only the corn silage portion, 9% NDF coming from this ingredient, from this forage. What happens? Improve it 10, 20, or 30%. I get improvements, efficiencies from 9 to 2.5, perhaps 2.8% improvement efficiency, savings in dollars per ton of dry matter between almost $3 to the $8 per ton of dry matter. So better quality, difficult to make improvements, although potentials are out there. Okay. All right, let me wrap it up this. So I hope I'm doing good in time over here. So take home one, the digestibility. So this fiber digestibility may positively affect the energy content of these diets, regardless. I guess the common sense would be that that would affect, well, grower diet, but regardless if it is a grower or a finishing diet, the potential is out there, and we have data that shows some improvement, okay? Regardless if it's a growing or a finishing diet. So that popular forage source might not be consistent as one may think. I shared my previous experience over there that we were expecting that forage to have a higher fiber digestibility as it's supposed to because of the type of the trait and the hybrid that we used. But there is a very big difference between whatever we planted from what we actually fed to the animals, right? There's a long journey between those two things, okay? Among all the nutrients, it seems like the structural carbohydrates, fiber fraction, let's put that way in general, is the ones with the greater potential to be improved, that although other improvements can be made as well in the starch digestion, the amount of organic acids. But the biggest chunk of your forage that you're feeding is actually fiber. It is actually fiber. And to finish here, these grower diets proportionate a greater return or improvement due to two mainly things. One, the greater proportion of fiber that they were adding to the diets or that they had inside those diets. And the second one is because of the growth development of that animal. So that animal was not in a finisher phase yet, not adding those expensive units of body weight because of the elevated adipose tissue. They were not there, they were growing. Okay? So the most prominent effect might be related to a decrease in a reduction on the intake, these animals becoming more efficient, so eating less to gain the same amount of body weight. And the final here is forage and roughage sources. So we can talk about this, which definition we want to use, but sources in the diet are not the only fiber contributors in the diet. Especially now we need to open our eyes for modern diets where we are adding alternative ingredients, which usually have elevated fiber content. Okay, so we cannot close our eyes for those things, especially now with these modern diets, which contain more byproducts or co-products, right? And to finish here, I just want to thank you, all my graduate students over here. They are the ones that do all the hard job, and they allow me to come over here and just have fun with you guys. So thank you to them. And with that, Mary, I'll close and would like to take any questions if you may have. Yes, sir.
So we're talking about theoretically improving the digestibility of the
Yes, measured improvements, but over here, yes, I separated those in percentages. Right. Yes, sir. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
When we do that, what do we do to effectively do that?
Mm-hmm. All right. So the question was, you're improving, and I'm assuming you want to direct this to a finisher diet?
Right.
Okay. Great. So great point. So the question was, if we increase the digestibility of this fiber, what are we doing in a finisher diet? What are we doing with the effective NDF, right? With the ability of that, or physically effective, could we use that term? What are we doing with the ability of that fiber to stimulate that ruminal function, that ruminal health, let's put it that way. So I guess the point we are making here is, how do we measure physically effective fiber is one thing, right? Because the way we do measure physically effective fiber is, right, we shake the box. So, or measure by the amount of dead animals. Yep. So I guess to go straight to the point in here, we are increasing fiber digestibility. We're increasing fiber digestibility, but we still have that particle size in there, right? We have a less. Uh-huh. You might be increasing. So the point is, if you're increasing the digestibility, you're decreasing the particle size of the particle, right? So could we increase the fiber particle size of this diet and have technologies to improve the digestibility? So maybe that's the balance that we need to do. That's how we need to juggle around this. And that's a great point. And if you allow me, just like add to that comment is very interesting. Is how can we use these actually to affect the overall fiber digestibility in the diet, especially when we use those technologies, which was a topic that was kind of in the drawer for a long period of time, and then we start to add more of these alternative products, we start to raise this fiber in the diet, right? So what can we do to improve the overall fiber digestion of the diet without affecting the health or having more dead animals in there, right? So you could balance with the particle size if you're going to have less NDF, right? That's a very interesting point. Thank you for making that comment. Yes, sir. Yes. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Okay. I don't have to repeat the question, right? Yes. Oh, I do. Okay. Okay. So you were not on the microphone, right? Yes, sir. So the question was which type of sorghum we use in that comparison there. If it was a forage sorghum or I'll tell you the answer already. So the sorghum that we use in there was a forage sorghum, so which has grains in it, and it was a brown midrib trait. Had a brown midrib trait, and that's part of my. I was sharing some of I don't know if you saw my semblance, a little bit of my frustration because we were expecting that to have a greater NDF, or that we expected a better NDF digestibility. So when I was talking with Matt earlier, so stealing a little bit of your thunder, man, over there, is variability of this, right? So on average, yes, they have a greater fiber digestion, but there's a very long journey between planting that seed and then feeding the animal. And perhaps we did something wrong in the middle of that trajectory. So I guess I answered, I went too long on that answer, but.
One more question.
Yes, sir.
How does a producer determine NDF?
Great. Yes. So how a producer can determine NDF digestibility. So there are a couple of options nowadays. Some commercial labs, not all of them, but some of them can do estimations for you. Some of them will actually have access to animals that are ruminantly cannulated, which can do that digestion. Actually, the chemistry, the wet chemistry of it. Some of them don't have, but they have, I would like to assume, good equations to use near infrared, so using near. I hope they would, right? But there are some opportunities, commercially available opportunities out there. And I guess it brings another point is that due to the variability, and there is a long journey between whatever hybrid you select and what you're feeding the animals, I would encourage for that measurement to be performed or to be submitted for analysis at least. The time frame that I should analyze my forage, is that your question?
No, how many hours?
Oh yeah, for the lab, yeah. So the question was how much time incubation for that NDF digestibility, right? So a very interesting point. So if we do that 1 divided by 3.5% of the rate of passage, we're gonna get around that 30 hours or so. And I guess that's a very popular, I believe some of the commercial labs are recommending that 30 hours incubation. A lot of forage that goes close to the extension, the full extension of that digestion, right? So sometimes a less accurate number becomes more of an information because it's more precise. So it's not about the accuracy, but how precise or how less variable you can get that measurement. So I don't completely discourage the 48 hours, although some of the labs, they offer multiple options. So if you do that 1 over 3.5% of rate of passage, it will be about 30 hours. And that's going to be a popular number, I guess. A very interesting point.
All right, let's thank Jhones.
Thank you.